Hi, I'm the athletic diabetic, and today we're going to be talking about what is diabetes. So, a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and it really changed my life. Things were really hard for a while, and it took me some time of understanding the disease better and then how to manage it to really get my life back and be able to just do whatever I want. So, I'm trying to teach as many people as I can about diabetes and how to manage it correctly. Today, we're talking about just simply what is diabetes. So, in simple terms, diabetes is a disease that's caused by uncontrolled high blood sugar. Now, why does this happen? Why is your blood sugar out of control? Well, there's going to be one of two reasons. The first one, and the less common type, is type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune disease. It's just something that you are just born with. An autoimmune disease is something that happens when the body's immune system, instead of attacking viruses that are trying to make you sick, it makes a mistake and it actually ends up attacking the body itself. In the case of type 1 diabetes, it attacks the pancreas. The pancreas is responsible for producing insulin, and our immune system destroys the insulin producing cells of the pancreas to the point where it is no longer able to produce insulin, and that's going to cause some problems that we'll talk about in just a second. Now, for type 2 diabetes, it's a little bit different. It's not a genetic disorder or an autoimmune disease, but it's still an issue with the insulin. The insulin here is kind of the key problem with diabetes, of not having enough insulin or not reacting to an insulin appropriately is going to cause all the issues. So in a type 2 diabetic, their body produces some insulin, just not enough, and they also have what's called insulin resistance. This happens, unfortunately, due simply to just lifestyle decisions that someone's had. They've had a fairly unhealthy diet and unhealthy exercise habits throughout their life, where they've caused two problems. First, they've essentially burnt out their pancreas. So, you can think of your pancreas kind of as like the engine on a car, where the fact of, an engine, it can have a very long life. It can run for a lot of miles if you take care of it appropriately. But at the end of the day, it's only got so many miles in it. Your pancreas is kind of going to be the same way. You can take care of it, but it can only produce so much insulin before it ends up just getting burnt out and not working correctly anymore. So in a type 2 diabetic, they've had a very high carbohydrate diet for many, many years. So long so that now the pancreas is just burnt out and it's not able to produce insulin like it's supposed to. That's the first problem. The second problem is what's called insulin resistance. So when you eat a lot of carbohydrates and your body produces a ton of insulin, your body unfortunately becomes more resistant to the effects of insulin. So in a normal healthy body, just as kind of a point of reference, we can use this ratio, which is you might only need 1 unit of insulin in order to digest 10 grams of carbohydrates. Now, in a insulin resistant body, it's going to be totally different. It wouldn't be uncommon to see a ratio of more like 1 to 1 or 1 to 2 or even 1 to 1. So meaning it would take potentially 5 units of insulin to digest 10 units of 10 grams of carbohydrates. So now the insulin production needs to be 5x what it is in a normal person. So the demands of insulin are much, much higher. And remember, this person has already burnt out their pancreas and it's not producing enough insulin in the first place. So without enough insulin, you're going to have issues with high blood sugar. So insulin really is kind of the key to all the problems here. What insulin does is it takes the carbohydrates in our diet that have been metabolized down to glucose, and it takes the glucose from the red blood cell and it moves it into the cells to be utilized for energy. That's kind of what I have diagrammed down here, poorly diagrammed, but tried to draw it just a little bit so it can make sense. So what happens is, you've learned this since grade school. Carbohydrates are kind of your first source of energy in the body. They're very easily digested, very rapidly digested, and they can get into your cells very quickly. So let's say that this right here is just a normal red blood cell with a normal blood sugar. These, white snowflakes out here are sugar attached to the red blood cell. And this is how it works. You've got your sugar attached to the red blood cell. Your body, needs energy in your thigh muscles or your arm muscles, and the red blood cells are taking the sugar there so it can be utilized by those, muscle cells of the body. So insulin will then interact with the red blood cell, carry the sugar into the cell, where it can be used by the mitochondria or other little organelles in there and used for energy, or stored as fat for later use. So that's how it's supposed to work. What happens in diabetics, type 1 or type 2, is they need energy, they're eating carbohydrates, and there is no insulin available. So we forget about the insulin, and now the sugar that you've eaten starts to attach itself to your blood cells, and it fundamentally changes your blood. So what it does is the function and the flexibility of your red blood cells is extremely important. So red blood cells, they're small in size, they're very flexible, and those characteristics, and they have kind of this concave shape to them. These characteristics allow red blood cells to carry oxygen, to be deformable, so they can go in and out of different blood capillaries and vessels throughout the body. But when you add more and more sugar to the blood, it becomes more rigid, less flexible, and even larger in size. And now this red blood cell that's carrying too much sugar isn't able to go in and out of the capillaries as easily. It's not able to carry as much oxygen. And instead of being, the health of the body, if healthy blood means a healthy body, unhealthy blood with too much sugar attached to it is actually now toxic to your body. And so this is going to start causing a lot of problems when you have high blood sugar that you can't get rid of. In the next video, we'll talk about the symptoms of diabetes and what happens when you've got unchecked high blood sugar. So thanks for learning what is diabetes, and stick around for the next few short videos if you want to learn more about the symptoms and complications.